All right, this will be like a part 6 to the words of Moses. This is a progressional model of what it is for jurisdiction, which are words. Diction, like dictionary, and juris is where we get the word right, like right words, and right words is related to righteousness. And we think righteousness, we think it's this moral word, but inside, we talked about before, inside our moral compass and those light, fluffy Christianese words is hidden dominion theology and operations. Knowing what this formula is here, the beginning, the in between, and the end, you'll have a phrase, and I just want to kind of say it. You have a phrase like the calamity of Moab. The calamity of Moab, knowing the beginning, which is the trust, and the in between and the end, the calamity of Moab, but it doesn't matter if it's of Moab or of Babylon, or it doesn't matter what country or what city it is. Of is a double bridle, and the whatever is fit into these different categories of beginning, middle, and end. Beginning is always the trust. Everything that you did in writing, everything on paper, that has to do with the name. How you wrote your name is done at the birth with the mother. That's in Job 3. And it's actually a ton of play, almost in every book talks about it. And when it hints to the mother or the woman or the womb or the birth, it's always referring to Job 3. And Job is a culmination of all the words of Moses that's laid out, stretched out through all the books. And every book has a different angle of that, so you can get the infrastructure of the birth of a nation and what point and what operation and what does it look like on the board at the end. Okay? So the calamity of Moab it's like, we talk about the calamity, talking about all these, the curse that came on Moab, like famine and sword and pestilence, and they say judgment, right? It's like the four horsemen of apocalypse and results of that, like the pale horse and the black horse and things like that. It's like all this bad stuff, right? It's like how Israel was carried off to Babylon, right? That's the calamity, like all this bad stuff that happens to you because you disobey God. But it's of Moab. So it's the calamity comes to them, but also on the flip side, because there's 7 to 8 interpretations when you read the Bible in any particular given area, what's on the dark is also on the light. Because the calamity of Moab started with the trust, because they gave their rights up and gave their name up. So now they got some other Mesni lord and some lords over them, and they're all slaves, and they get in this debt money system, right? And then that's why the calamity comes. All that calamity comes, and then they're able to build their inventions, which controls the weather and causes all this stuff, right? These false flags and things like that. Just like it did in Job, when all this bad stuff happened to Job, it's all controlled weather stuff. And a lot of people read it as if God did it, or God used the devil to do it, right? But it's like, how does that look? Really, natural things removed by just spiritual things alone? Or those spiritual things on people, and those people build these inventions that moves the weather. See, you have to know all the pieces in between. We're going to get to that. That's related to this about, we have these things called but and we're going to get to the pattern of and that's all in Proverbs, but now I'll come back to it and we'll read this here in a minute, but I just want to kind of get that on camera real quick. But the calamity of Moab works both ways, because 7 and 8 interpretations. So the calamity first starts with the trust. That's the calamity, is the trust. But they have to train you. Any Babylonian system has to train you in operations and administrations or your traffic to do the hireling, corporate way of life, where it's what's in it for me. Serve your own self first at someone else's expense and do some sort of pyramid thing, right? You have to do that because that's after their trust of the all caps name that goes to them, and the money has to go up, through taxes and through the Mesni system, the feudal system, and all that stuff, where you got rich versus poor. It's all done through the trust. That's the claim of Moab, and then it was meant to make you come up short, so that debt collectors come and carry you off to another nation till you pay off your debt. And they'll say it's all because you worshipped idols. Well, it's not just worshiping idols. What came with idolatry is the calamity of Moab. Is what they build. They build houses and chariots, and they fund war and everything off of your name. which you are collateral for, to pay for that. That's how the money system came in. That's a triumvirate. That came in, that's why they triumph. It's a three-way system using a trust, which is a three-way system, where there's an executor, a trustee, and a beneficiary. Right? Same thing, a triumvirate is three different pieces of lords that all own you in a different way to build that world empire. So the calamity of Moab ends up being, well, they come, you sow so another eats. Like it says in Ecclesiastes, you build something and another takes, a stranger will eat thereof. That's what it says, that's an evil disease. And that's because you never have enough, because you're always paying out bills. You got rent and mortgage, and you never own anything because someone else owns you and owns your stuff, and you think you own it, and you're working or you're sowing, but another's eating because you're feeding them off of your dime. Does that make sense? So that is the calamity of Moab. But if the calamity of Moab becomes a flip when you change your trust and change your name, and all of a sudden you don't owe no one because you have no lords over you, then that same calamity that was bad for you is now good for you. You switch up lords, and now the calamity of Moab is the calamity that comes from you, because those people that were feeding off you, the debt collectors go after them. And that's all in the scriptures, and we'll try to find that thread today. There's so many places I can go, and I'm going to hit, but what I really want to cover is some of the synonymous terms and what that looks like. And I have many places I can go, and I'm just going to kind of go off the cuff and see where I can go, because as I was going through the study this week, I have too many options, so I'm trying to like pick one in the moment. So, but what I do know is what I want on camera as of right now is the and the but, using something like the calamity of Moab to explain which one it is, because I'm going to be talking this way. As I begin to read something, I'm going to say, it means this according to the trust, it means that according to the operations, it means this according to the end result. It means this, breaking the fourth wall, as speaking to the reader, as a mystery, but it means that as concerning the written law of trust. I'm going to begin to hit all the interpretations, if that makes sense. There was something else that I wanted to get on camera. Okay, yeah, I'm going to read this. So the pattern which when we read, you got a soft form and a hard form. This is majored on in my double bridles playlist. So, but I'm going to kind of touch on it here real quick. Your parts, or the hard part, you got your string and your pearls, like a pearl necklace. That's the way your stories are written, in a pearl necklace form. And the pearl is kind of like this boxcar to a train, and your string to your pearls is train tracks. Or you can say this is like your grapes, and this is a vine. And in that, you got the stones of brooks, like a river. You got these stones. So this river, string river, or this train track, has these stones and grapes and boxcars and pearls that makes this train of thought, or this chain, like a supply chain, right? And that's what it looks like. And this is also what dance choreography looks like. If you were to dance around a room, it looks like a string of pearls. If you take like Argentine tango or ballroom or anything like that, okay? So you have to know that one to get there. But when this train of thought, it's like a train track that can be switched. You can switch tracks. So you can reconfigure into an alternate stream or a train of thought. And so you can have more than one meaning inside this train of thought. And so each boxcar, each pearl, it carries cargo that applies to more than one thing. So that's what I was saying, like the calamity of Moab. The calamity of Moab is a trust, but it's also the operation of that trust. But if you switch up that trust, and it's now no longer from you and against you, but actually for you, and you're the beneficiary, not the trustee, and you swap out the roles, and it goes back into your Christian name, and you take away their power, now now the calamity of Moab is the calamity that you give them, that comes from you. It's of Moab, it's of you, right? But it goes out to them. It brings calamity, and all the same judgments that were coming on you now goes on your enemy. So now there's double meanings in the parts and the labels. You're going to see that when I mean about the pearls and stuff. But when you write, there's going to always be more than one reference. So when they list a bunch of references, and then it says something like it, or thing or they or them. Like, well, what is it? If there's more than one reference, what is it? So you can connect dots, and that's what makes you switch up these train tracks and switch up what is the meaning of your boxcar. By me labeling the these parts of beginning, between, and end, and telling you, I'm giving you the elements of the patterns of thinking of how to, in your mind, basically plug and play these different operations or these different points of places in which you to come up with an interpretation to what you're reading. Okay? So, and that's why I said this right here is basically 8 different interpretations. The 8th one is, they call it sound. And it's sound and language. That's the 8th interpretation. Basically, it's like the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone, if you learn Latin, the Latin language, you can unlock all the languages of Europe. And that pattern, that construction pattern, or that reading pattern is in the Rosetta Stone. Someone actually, chipped away on the stone. It's in Europe somewhere. You can Google this and stuff, but you can actually learn and unlock all that. And that is what they call, what it says in 2 Timothy 1:13, it's called hold fast the form of sound words. There's actually words that have a sound. That's like the, what they say, like is hidden in plain sight, but that plain could be like not in a actually valley or plain, but it's actually a square plane, but spelled 2 different ways. And that's an example. But, just like in, the secret art of grammar, when you learn grammar, like if you begin to learn like all the different languages, you'll see that some books read from back to front, read from right to left. But some books, like in English, we go from front to back, this is this way, and we read from left to right. Okay? So how you read it, it's a mere flipping pattern. And then if you learn Spanish versus English, the way the structure is put together of a sentence, it's different. That same construction pattern, which is in a Rosetta Stone, that is the way the Bible's written. And if you don't know that, you're never going to spin the stuff in your head and get the interpretations. So that's what I said, the 7 arts and sciences help you to see that stuff. You have to know music and geometry and different things like that. And what is the secrets of astronomy? Not astrology, astronomy, the study of the stars. Therefore, you have to know, the flat Earth model. You have to know the firmament and how it was built. Because if you don't know that, you won't know the circle of the Earth. If you don't know the circle of the Earth, you won't understand the geometry as well as the astronomy, and then you won't understand music, which has a scale of 7. The 8th is the same as the 1st, and that makes a wheel. And when you go up that scale, it's called an octave. It's a chain within a chain within a chain that has a scale in it. And this is how I'm writing all this stuff out. It's according to that same pattern. So I won't get too much into sound and language, but just know there is an 8th interpretation. And this is crazy because I don't know all the roots to Rosetta Stone yet. I don't know Latin yet. But once I get that, there's so many more interpretations within the 7. And this is what I was saying, is as soon as you get this, it's nuts. Absolutely nuts. So back on here, when there's more than one reference, when you're writing in this train of thought, you got these ambiguous words where that can mean anything, right? Well, what is it? And what do you mean by thing? Who's they and what them? What are these things and those things? That's this and that. This is these, that is those. That's just plural and these are singular. So when you read these words, know that there is a train tracks switching that can happen there, because there's more than one meaning and there's more than one reference. So, and then you have to understand that leads to a riddle form. What it's actually writing, what's literal, that literal saying and the actual saying, what's actually is the story. And the law form, the internal, external, the light and the dark. I already showed this stuff. That's 7 there, and the 8th is the actual sound. If you say something with the sound, or how you divide up a word, kind of like what we were saying with to remember. How you say remember? You can think remember, or you think remember. It's how you say it. Change up the meaning entirely. Remember the Lord. Require. is to not just like what I require of you, but it's also you're requiring, because then you say choir. Look at this. I'll give you a nice example of the sound. There's a choir, which is also like a singing choir, but a choir is also a what's it called? It's like pages of a book, right? But a choir, they sing a chorus, and that comes out. That chorus, which is Latin, it comes out of choralis, which is also not just chorale, it's also choral. See, choral is chorale. So I'm just saying it's the same word. I'm just saying it differently, which can be spelled choralum or choralian, which is choralian. See, there's chorale. There's with a K, with a CH, or with as a coral, like a coral reef. That's the bottom of the sea. And by the way, this is in Job 28. When we talk about the coral, the bottom of the sea, you got the geometry of the coral reef, what it looks like. And by the way, the coral reef is the same thing as like the train of thought. It's just a geometry pattern, but it's also the bottom of the sea. It's a foundation. So, and it's of the sea. This is the way that the devils talk, because they're of the sea. They're not of the heavens. They're not of the earth. They're of the seas, which you find out. Dead things are formed from under the sea, it says in Job. So they use the same pattern. So it's what they call the wisdom of the gods in the book of Daniel. The wisdom of the gods is also the wisdom of the holy gods. That's in Daniel chapter 2 and chapter 5. But choral, which is choral, is a chorus that's composed or by a choir, or composed for or sung by a choir. So that's what a choral is. It's basically, the choral is also a chorus. That's where we get the word correlation. That basically, if you think about it, that's what a coral reef is. If you look at the geometry of it, or like, let's say, because a coral reef, not many people see, it's a little confusing, so I'll say this. In a grapevine, you'll think in that grapevine, the end of that thing is different than the beginning, but they're all correlated one to another. It's a string of pearls that these are all different parts of the same thing. That's what correlation is. It's a choral. So you got now with the sound, is choral is a correlation, but core means to gather together. So you gather together because everyone's got a different piece of the picture. That's the way that all the stories are written, with different piece of the puzzle. I'll show you real quick where that is in the Bible. In Jeremiah 31, I'll show you what I mean is that, what's it called? How they use it for part of the story, but it's also to signal to the reader. I'm sorry, it's Jeremiah 36. It says, Then took Jeremiah another roll and gave it to Baruch the scribe, the son of Neriah, who wrote therein from the mouth of Jeremiah all the words of the book. Like the words of the book. The words of Moses is what he was doing. He's continuing on for his time. The words of the book which Jehoiakim, king of Judah, had burned in the fire, and there were added besides unto them many like words. So it fits part of the story that, like, okay, this scroll was burned, so I had to do another one. So I had to write, similar words or like words. But actually, even though he did that according to the story, but when this breaks the fourth wall, speaks to the reader, the words of the book are like words, or they're synonymous terms. What are the like words and synonymous terms? So the synonymous terms is like this, and we're going to now get into more of the study, I'll use Psalm 31. In thee, O Lord, do I put my trust. Let me never be ashamed. Deliver me in thy righteousness. What you find out is God's righteousness is my trust. What's my is thy, and what's thy is mine, because we are in thee. If you are in the Lord or in Christ, you're in the Lord. That means you're in the executor, under the office of executor as a beneficiary, or you're a trustee, or you have beneficiaries and you're a trustee and beneficiaries are underneath you. Right? You have sons and you're a father, but you're a son underneath another father, and they're lords over you. now you're in thee, because that is your trust, and that is his righteousness. Or you can say, I have rights because of the trust. The trust is what gives you rights. And so that's what we have in our Constitution. That's what righteousness is. Righteousness is a trust, and trust is righteousness. These are like words. One is like the other, or it's the same thing over and over again. So when it says, bow down your ear to me, deliver me speedily. How are you delivered speedily? You are delivered speedily anytime you show your trust. If you express a trust in court, that's how you're out of there real quick. That's how God delivers you. Now, also, the way you write your trust, and you give, if you're not in thee anymore, and now you're in another Lord, because it's no longer your trust. You gave him your name. The earth is given to the hand of the wicked. Now the wicked has a hand, and you're in it. Now it's no longer your righteousness. You need delivered. How? In thy righteousness. It has to be the Lord's. Thy is a possession word. That means it's his. Just like my is a possession word. My and thy is tied to Lord. That means possession. So you have to be in thee. To be in thee is in thy. You have to be in it. That means, do I put? So if you're in it, that means you have to be put. That's why these are like words, right? Bow down your ear to me and deliver me speedily. You have to change your ward. You have to be rewarded, and you have to be delivered, because you created a ward and livery upon you, because you created a trust and an estate. Estates and trusts were all done through deeds and names. Okay? So, be thou my strong rock. What is my strong rock? My strong rock is my trust. So now we got a synonymous term, or a like word, or a similar word to trust. Now I can start to write about this strong rock, and you now know I'm talking about a trust. So my strong rock is a trust. But it's also for a house of defense to save me. Well, if you're strong, and you have a strong rock, that's defense. Okay, so now whenever you read the word defense in another book anywhere, you got to plug in defense is to be strong, is to have a rock, is to have a trust. Your trust is a defense. But watch this. I put Isaiah 33:16. You're going to see this. 33:16. It says, he shall dwell on high, his place of defense. Now there's a place of defense. What is his place of defense? Well, it's on high. Where's on high? You got to find out that there is a place that you have to put your trust. On high was behind the wall, and the wall was a high wall with high towers, which were called watchtowers, which had the elders in it, and the elders were to guard your trust. That's where it was. That's why it's on high there as far as an actual place. But it also built you as an elder in the office, so it's a high place as a high office, which is an operation and an administration. A high office, an elder office, which is a father. That is an executor or a lord. To be high, that's why it's called the Most High. So now this high place of defense covers that middle ground of what we was talking about. You got the operation, administration, as well as the term, the trust. So this is why I'm saying you can change the definition, the interpretation of your pearls. Where's that one where it's beginning, middle, end? There it is. So we got the trust is called my defense. But my defense is how I'm doing that. My defense is the wall I just built. That's my defense. But my defense was first the trust, but the trust is also in the wall that I build around my city. My city is my defense. But the people that are up there, they're my eyes and ears. They're the elders. They're my defense. So far, we got like just, many different things of what that one phrase covers. You see what I'm saying? I'm just kind of quickly saying that. So, he shall dwell on high. His place of defense shall be the munition of rocks. Here it is, rocks. Strong rock, defense. How come those are right by each other? How come those are right by each other? Because it's the same. It's giving you hints. It's saying the same thing. The munition of rocks means fortress. You actually build a fortress by your trust, because that's what they were building. They build fortresses. Did you know that a lot of warfare is funded off your trust? This is why they can tax you, and those tax dollars and that trust is all going to the same thing, funds war. Okay? It builds a government that's a corporation, not a government that's back to the people again. It goes out to these other lords. So it said, bread shall be given him, and his waters shall be sure. Now this is really funny because it talks about bread and waters. It goes off into, when your enemy hungers, feed him, and when he thirsts, give him drink. We'll see if we cover that. That's the secret of Proverbs, and there's an operation for that. Hopefully I can get back to that, but basically in a nutshell is when you go long, you actually short another system, and you can actually give the Caesars with Caesars and give the gods with gods. That's what that means. But I'll have to major on that in one video someday. But that's in essence what that is. But that's why it's sure. It says sure means it's a sure word. It's a sure thing. It's like insurance, because what sure is a trust. Trust or a sure thing. So that's why it's a place of defense. And then, since there's defense, there's also offense, or what they also call an offender. You got an offender. An offender is also offense. Someone that offends. So it says, for the terrible one, in Isaiah 29:20, says, the terrible one is brought to nothing, and the scorner is consumed, and all that watch for iniquity are cut off, that make a man an offender for a word, and lay a snare for him that reproves in the gate. Remember, the gate is where the wall was, and that's where the elders were, that's where the trusts were, and turn aside the just for what? A thing and nothing. Well, there you're brought to nothing for a thing and nothing, right? That's the terrible one. But what's so funny, look, notice this while this train of thought goes. The same pattern we're reading somewhere else is also read here in Isaiah. The terrible one is a pearl, is brought to nothing. Well, brought to nothing is your string. So that's your action. He's brought to nothing, but who's brought to nothing? The terrible one. Well, who's the terrible one? That interpretation changes. If you're brought to nothing, that means you can be brought up. That's the opposite of that. And the scorner. You got the scorner and the terrible one. You think this. So these are like words. The terrible one and the scorner is related to the terrible one. The terrible one can produce the scorner. If you don't know what scorner is, by the way, is someone that kind of mocks. Like, yeah, right. Gold. You're investing in gold. It's kind of like that's what scorner is. So a terrible one. Now you got inside the terrible one, you got the tare, which is there's wheat and tares, and you got the rib of the tare, like the woman came from the rib. You also got T-rib. T is like terrestrial instead of celestial, which is earth. And so basically, the terrible one is someone knows how to use the women to tear apart your trust, and they're using the earth jurisdiction to do that. They're taken from one jurisdiction and building that, and that's why he's the terrible one. And it all goes to this Antichrist at the top. You have to know the thread to this terrible one. But also the terrible one, so that's the evil part. The terrible one's also the Lord, because remember it said that the great and awesome day, or great and terrible day of the Lord. It says in Joel. The great and awesome day, or the awesome is terrible. God is terrible because anything the devil can do, God can do. Anything God can do, the devil can do. They use the same operations, but they're a little bit different. That's why God is also the terrible one. It says it's brought to nothing, and this happened, by the way, when you said Jesus was set at naught. He was set at naught, and he was brought at naught because he was a terrible one to the Babylonian system, and that's how he became sin who knew no sin. And so they were terrible to him, and they were tearing the terrible one, because otherwise he was going to tear them. But in the tearing of him was what brought them to nothing. It's all in there. It's Isaiah. It's deep, but I'm saying it really fast, and I'm saying it very clever because that is the revelation of it. I have to just beeline it because I'm trained to have those maps. You know what I mean? And it would take too long for me to prove just that, but I can prove it.
And he has to me many times.
Many times. But so you have, and all that watch for iniquity, are cut off. Now this works both ways. This is why, by the way, Isaiah is written this way. Everything that seems like a woe is me is all the answers. Inside the problem is the answers. So the terrible one is brought to nothing, And the scorners consumed, all that watch for iniquity are cut off. That what? Make a man an offender for a word. But actually, a word is a man. This is why I was saying when what's it called? The guy that's, I forget, he's on YouTube. I said on one of the earlier stuff, this guy, he said, who's going to do that to me? The state? Is that Mr. or Mrs. State? But you have to know, when you say a man, especially a living man, you're claiming a certain jurisdiction. When you say man, that's the words of Moses. That's why it says that make a man an offender. Why is a man an offender? Because saying you're a man is actually going on offense, and now since you're a man, you're a living man, you're in the land of the living, you're using your trust, right? And that's a word that you want to use. A word is a man. That's why they're offended. They're offended that you would call yourself a man and not call yourself a resident or a person, because it's a man's person they want you to be. They want you to say you're a person, right? That's why they change the words, and that's how they lay a snare for him that reproves in the gate. But this works both ways. You got to be in the gate, means in the trust. That is where a man is in the gate. That's in the trust. And then you turn aside, they try to turn aside the just for a thing of nothing. Well, basically, instead of becoming a man, you're a thing. And being a thing of nothing, which is a person, that's the mystery of this, a thing of nothing. If you're not a man, you're a thing. That's what I was saying is, you guys see this. I don't think I put this on camera yet. Here it is. You got these words of land, air, water. That's law, land, air, water. That's the land of the living, the earth. The water is the sea, and the heavens is the air, right? All your trusts are in the air. But when you're in the water, you're a thing. You're res. That's basically a thing that goes inside trust. That's what the word res means. In Latin, res means thing. That's why you're a resident. You identify as res, or you're a thing. You're a person. Actually, there it is, person. You're a thing and nothing. You're nothing. You're none, or it. Those are all the words of the water jurisdiction. These are terms of jurisdictions. But in the land, you're a man or woman. That's a who. Oh yeah, who's that? And you're a he and a she. You're not a it. You're a he, a she, or a who. You have to know that these are the words. Because being a man, what it was saying in Isaiah 32:2 says, being a man, it actually hides you in the land jurisdiction, in the constitutional courts. You're changing your state of forum. The state of forum changes to a man. So being a man, that's actually what hides you. That's how you're hidden. That's the secret place of the Most High. You have to use those words, and that's what I was saying right here in 32. And a man shall be as a hiding place. Why is a man a hiding place? From the wind, and a covert, like a covert operation. A covert operation is a shelter. You see what I'm saying? That shelter, or the secret place of the Most High, was just abide under the shadow of the Almighty. The shadow of the Almighty is your trust. That's when you're a man. You have to be a man. The man, you find out, is a king. So, behold, a king shall reign where? In righteousness. Why is it in righteousness? Because it's in the trust. Remember we talked about the trust is righteous? And so, and princes shall rule in judgment. But if it's in righteousness, it's in judgment. And you judge according to the righteousness, which is according to the trust. That's a delivered speedily. Oh, he's a man? Oh, he's a king then. Okay, he's sovereign. Okay, he's a sovereign citizen? Sorry, can't be a citizen, can't be a sovereign same time. I'm not under a lord and also a lord myself. That'd be weird. That would cancel out my trust. I can't be in a trust and be in your trust and have my trust same time. All right, I'm going to be light and dark at the same time. I'm everything and nothing. So that's a man. So a man is a king. See, that's many like words. That's the pattern. That's what I mean by synonymous terms. Behold, a king shall reign in righteousness, is in judgment, and in judgment is righteousness. But they're two different angles of the same picture. If you're in right standing, you're in judgment, because that's how you judge. You judge according to who? Who's that? That's the mystery of who. And by the way, we have to show that real quick, because where is in chapter 19, who is in chapter 40 of Isaiah. When he says that, it says that in 40:12, it says, who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and meted out heaven with a span, and comprehended the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains and scales, and the hills in a balance? Who has directed the Spirit of the Lord? And being his counselor, hath taught him. With whom took he counsel, and who instructed him? This who, it's everywhere.
you think who, like God, but when you find out God gives you the Holy Spirit and the Holy Spirit's on you, he shows you how God runs his kingdom up in heaven. He wants you to run it down here the same way, but he wants you to do it on paper and build here on the earth what he has up there. That's the who's you. If you're a man, and if you're a man, you're a king. If you're a man, a king, you're in a trust, you're a lord. So each one has something different. You know what I mean? So I'm just going to quickly touch on that. The other place, and that was, remember we talked about Job 9:24. That's our root scripture. That's where some of the who is inside Isaiah. And Isaiah gives us a bunch. Anywhere you see who in Isaiah, he gives you scripts what you can say in court. But Isaiah 19 is the where. Oh yeah, where are they? Yeah, where are thy wise men? Oh, they're wise men, huh? Where are they again? Let them tell thee now, and let them know what the Lord of hosts has purposed upon Egypt. Yeah, where are they? And that what that where means is like they're of the sea, therefore they're a thing and nothing, therefore they're a person, they're not. That's why who and where is he? When I talk about where are they again? Yeah, where are those guys at? They're wise, huh? Oh yeah, they're so wise, where are they at? Because if they're so wise, they'd be where I'm at. Therefore they'd be doing the same jurisdiction, because I have a superior I have a superior jurisdiction. That's what they call the supreme law of the land, because the supreme law of the land is like where Supreme Court. There's a higher court, and there's the most high is the Lord. That if you're the Lord, you're over a king. That's what's greater than a king is a Lord. And what makes a Lord is trusts, you know. But inside, it's kind of like a Lord is like gold level, and inside gold level is silver and bronze and iron and stone and wood, right? You got all those those layers are inside. Gold is not just like gold by itself. It's layers of all the other levels. So inside silver is bronze and everything under bronze. So everything inside silver and bronze is all inside gold. So you have to know that structure, you can pull those apart. It's kind of like, not only is a Lord a king and a man, but an apostle is a prophet, an evangelist, a pastor, and a teacher. The fivefold ministry is broken down. The right hand of God, it's my left hand. The right hand of God, which has fingers, is all about that thumb that touches all the fingers. That thumb is the apostle. Inside what makes an office of apostle is the guts of a prophet, the guts of an evangelist, guts of a pastor, and guts of a teacher. If you rightly divide these, you can see all these fit perfectly inside this gold level office, so to speak. So you got your silver and your bronze and your stone and your wood, right? All those go inside this. And so you can, and you see these things inside, like Daniel. This is what I was saying to some of the infrastructures, what you find out, how these different kings and lords and stuff are playing with jurisdictions and playing with offices and putting things in part. When you look in the book of Daniel, you have Daniel 5, it says, Belshazzar the king made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords. Why does he have 1,000 lords? See what I'm saying? He's the king, but he has 1,000 lords. So he's a king, though. He's not a lord. And that's what they were doing, is dividing these up. But in God's kingdom, you can be both. And that's what you need to do. And this is actually the secret to Daniel. So, but like in 5:10, it says, now the queen, by reason of the words of the king, see, there's the word, like the words of Moses, there's the words of the king. These words make the king. And his lords, there it is again, he has lords. Why does this king have lords? He has many masters, and here he is, he's a king. It said, he came into the banquet house, and the queen spake and said, O king, live forever. But the only way a king can live forever is if he has a trust. He has to be a lord, and he's not. So she can say that all she wants. This is why these guys are living. They're living off the back of this king. So you have to know what each one of those offices are, and that's literally the whole Bible. And it's in puzzle pieces, and you have to put it together. You'll see that like people are playing, and they do this all the time. I'll try to give an example of this, not to get too far off topic, but you'll have like your citizens or your residents that are things of nothing, and over them is a king. who's a man to be a king, but over him is some lord that makes him a thing of nothing to that lord, and that lord is a man. But he's a thing of nothing to a thing of nothing, and he has a God over him. You see what I'm saying? That gods go down, that God that's over him has his little demons. There's a big principality that rests on this principality, or this lord, this overlord, that has these minions under him, and there's these demons that are smaller that rest on them, and they fit in certain rooms of the kingdom of darkness, in these external offices, to run the operations of what's going on in that spirit realm around, that allows us, instead of Jacob's ladder, it's a different ladder that's where there's an opening to the bottomless pit, like it says in Revelation, and these demons come up, and it creates this circuit and this shadow of death. That's why you see over these big cities, like if you go to Venice Beach or something like that, it's really dark. You go to West Hollywood, it's really dark. Like Chicago, dark. Like if you go to like different little suburbs, like if you go to like Orange County, California, it feels bright compared to like West Hollywood, Venice Beach. It's super dark. It's super violent. You can feel drugs. You can feel alcohol. You can feel just dirtiness. You can feel, because the souls, everyone's dirty. You know what I mean? So it's the same way when you got people doing dirty deeds to get into these positions. You got these devils on them, and they're playing with what's on paper, and their titles. They got flattering titles, and some of them are persons, and some are men, dealing persons, but it's according to what they're trying to do. And this is why it was hard for, like, those things with court and Trump and everything. And they said, "Oh, you have no jurisdiction and stuff." This literally, they're playing with jurisdictions and stuff with words. And the more you get words you get, and the more mysteries you get, it's like a freaking grid. You got breach upon breach of layers where they can't find you, and you're tucking away and hiding. It's kind of like lying to someone. You're spinning words around. You're hiding. You're playing mind games with someone. That's what they do. They play. That's all court is. It's nothing but mind games. But when you have the revelation of Jesus Christ, you know the way it works. You can corner them to where they can't spin nothing no more, and you fence them in. You block them in, right? So, but that's in essence what was happening. There'll be, the Jews were doing this. The Jews were men, but yet they were persons underneath Caesar. That's what they said. We have no king but Caesar. So you go, really? So he's your king, huh? So they had to be things of nothing. You see what I'm saying? But they had Nero over Caesar. You have to understand that whole system and how they're using the earth to their benefit. But when you find all that out, how they're using the heavens to their benefit, because that's what it means by they trusted in themselves. They didn't just trust in themselves and are strong in themselves, like Job says, trust in themselves, like Luke says. They're literally trusting in themselves. They're making it look like they're operating this trust where they're for you, but they're really feeding off of you. And in the end, they owe another lord that's not even in the same country. Therefore, it's for themselves, because it creates their place in their nation, which that nation is someone else's. You think the United States of America is ours? It ain't. It's owned by the British Crown. It's Britain's. You have to know that. You think, oh, we're free, we're Americans. Like, no, you're not free. You're a captive. And that's all in here too. Let me just hit that up real quick. I know it seems like it's all over the place, but I have to touch all these things. About the captive. Those words, through the similar words or the like words, begins to paint a picture in the string of pearls. Jeremiah 29:14 says, "And I will be found of you," because it says in verse 13 says, "And you shall seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart." It's actually with your heart, which is your trust. You can, because it's public record, you find out. How you write your name, that's where your trust is, which is the birth, registry. And the birth registry was a census, and the census how they did taxes. That's what the Book of Numbers is about. You think it's, they're just doing a census to count you. It's like, yeah, they're doing that, but also a registry is also a trademark, and that's the mark of the beast, which gives power to the beast system, which makes you have an overlord and puts you in their hand. That's how you gave the earth away. And they become men over you, you become persons, because the way you wrote your name. It was the letters, how you wrote the letters, and you think letters like a letter, like Paul's letters, but it's an Esther. It's a double bridle is in the book of Esther says that you reverse letters, and that was the mystery of how to change the trust was reversing the letter. Don't do capital letters, do lowercase letters. That's called flattery. So you flatten the. That's what you give yourself You give yourself back a flattering title. What flatters them makes them most noble. When you rewrite the letters, you flatten the letters, and it gives you a flattering title because it makes you Lord again. This is what I say. It's about the same thing's the same thing. But anyway, that's when you search with your heart. And this happens spiritually too. If you search God with your whole heart, that's what it says. There's an internal meaning and an external meaning, a trust meaning. It says, I'll be found of you, saith the Lord, and I will turn away your captivity. What is your captivity? Your captivity is your heart. So my heart's captive? Well, number one, you need to be born again, yes. But also your trust is what makes you a captive. It's right there. Your trust is what made you a captive. And I will gather you from all nations. Why would you be scattered to all nations? Because that you got to go pay your debt. That's why they took you. That's why they took them away to Babylon. They were captives. It says, and from all places whither I have driven you. Well, see, God did it. God drove you away. Well, sort of. God let you be driven away because you did it to yourself because you were deceived. Saith the Lord, and I will bring you again into the place where I've caused you to be carried away. Where's the place? I bring you again into the place. Where's the place? Your heart. See, I got to bring you again. How does he do that? You got to reverse the letters. You got to change your you got to change your heart. So so that's about the captivity. You're carried away captive. You find out that you were sold. And so, let me see if I can find that too, because you're bondmen. So let's, oh, by the way, when it talks about they're putting them in prison and in the stocks, and it says over here, it says, for it shall come to pass in that day, say the Lord of hosts, I will break his yoke from off your neck and burst your bonds, and strangers shall no more serve themselves of him. What's so funny is you think like chains and stocks, like chains and fetters, like from prison when you're lashed up, but stocks and bonds, just like deeds and trusts, were actually made, and that's what actually funds the prison, by the way, is these stocks, and the stocks are made. That's what made this captivity long. You were actually going long for Babylon. You shorted yourself, and you were put in bonds and stocks on paper. These are debt instruments. That's made. And this is where Paul gets it when he talks about in my bonds. This is what Paul uses. It comes from here. Stocks and bonds comes from Jeremiah. And then it's also used in Esther. We'll go to Esther 7:4. You'll like this. So Esther 7:4. Esther is the last book that was written in history before you get to Job. And where Job's the culmination of all those words. Esther 7:4. There it is. Talking about, for we are sold, and I and my people to be destroyed. How were you sold? To be slain and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen, see, you're sold for bondmen. That's bonds. That's why I said they made a bond off your all caps name, and that's how they funded government. And then they make more bonds every time you get a ticket, like a traffic ticket. They make a bond off of that, and that's why you're given charges. You're charged because you got to pay the bill. That's what charges. You're brought up on charges. That's bonds. They're doing bond certificates and stuff, and they make stocks. You're sold in the stock market, and that's what they say. You got a CUSIP number and everything. That's your EIN. So that's the number of the beast. The mark of his name and the number of his name. You're given a Social Security number because there's a mark on your trademark, which is a registry. And they create bonds off of that, so you're bonded and insured for the debt. You're collateral, or you are a captive because you were sold. At what point was I sold? At birth. And bondwomen, I held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Actually, what's so funny, they say countervail, because inside every trust is a trust veil, and you can pierce someone's veil if their trust isn't done right. And so that's why they're giving a hint of how bonds are created. Bonds are created off the trust veil, which is the trust. So, and that's what I'm saying. It's all in here. It's hidden in the story, and that's what I was talking about. Remember, I said right here about reverse the letters. See, is to be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman. You find out Haman. This mystery of Esther is that Haman knew all the Babylonian dark arts as far as the trusts and stuff and how to use the scribe stuff, and he was making letters, and that's how he gave power to what's her name, the queen, Vashti. That's why she didn't say Vashti didn't come when the king called her. She didn't come because she actually find out that she got that over here from Haman. Where's it at? Yeah, that's how Haman was promoted. Haman took credit for everything that Mordecai did, and Haman's the one that trained Vashti, but it's a hidden story because once you get law, you start figuring out what happened behind the scenes. I have to cut corners a little bit because to show you everything, I have to like read it to you, and we won't get off the path. But that's reversing the letters. There's in every story there's a hidden story, and that's not being talked about. Let me see if I can get back to this though. So there's stocks and bonds and all that stuff, and you're captive when you're sold, and you become a bondman because of the bonds. That's why it says, I will burst your. How do you burst someone's bonds? Seriously? Well, I just bust them off of you. Burst is like a bursting of a bubble. That comes from Isaiah 30, verse 14. This is Isaiah 30, verse 14. It says, and he shall break it as the breaking of the potter's vessel that is broken in pieces. He shall not spare, so that there shall not be found in the bursting of it a sherd to take fire from the hearth or take water with all out of the pit. So there's a bursting, which is a breaking. So there is a break, like you break chains, right? But there's the bursting as in the swelling. So the swelling is a bursting where it's kind of like a market. All these things are interrelated. It'll give you words as concerning a certain point in this story, but it's an interrelated system. So when you burst your bonds, it's like when your bonds fail, like you can't pay the debt. That's like they're about to do that now. Like when they're messing with these markets and it implodes on itself. The reason why the whole system implodes is because people come up short, and that's called the bursting of it. It's like a bursting of the bubble. And so bonds are like a bubble. It's always meant to burst and implode because that's the scam. You think you get rich in the short term, but in the long term, it's screwing someone else because what happens is you have children, and debt can only go so far. Now there's good bonds, like there's just like anything can be bad, but there's good bonds in that if you use real substance. So like you give me a sure word through a bond, which is connected to a trust. I'm in a trust, and I know that you're going to actually build a city for me because I know you know how to do it. You're a builder. You're a wise master builder. So it's like the treasury bonds because it's connected to a treasury. It's connected to should be connected to real silver and gold, real substance. Therefore, I know when I give the money to the treasury and I get a bond, I'm going to get an interest back. It's going to, but what the interest should be, besides getting more of a percentage back, it should be what you built with my money. And that's why bonds are like stocks. When you buy stock into a company, you're getting that company off the ground, and everyone goes in on it because it takes a lot of members to create that wealth to get the job built. You know what I mean? So I can do the same thing with bonds as I can with stocks. They're just two different red tape, so to speak. But you can do the same thing in admiralty, in the waters, in administration, do bonds. And just play with, they say we get rich on paper. Oh, it's just on paper, right? It's just imaginary, it's fake. It's just numbers. And so that's why you got two different, types of bonds in two different jurisdictions. And you can use one where you think you're getting rich on paper, but really it's a Ponzi. And those stock brokers and things like that, or the ones dealing with you with the bonds, they could be building their palace off you because they're paying themselves a commission. And then if you want to sell it because the numbers on paper look high, they're going to give you someone else's money that's coming in, new money coming because they already spent yours. They just wrote it down. It's like a bank. What the banks do today. It's no different. That's a bad bond. Okay, and that's what they call the bursting of it. And the reason why it would burst, just to cut corners, is because when you go long and you don't invest in those bonds no more, you go into substance. These guys run out of people to sell to, and their Ponzi's come up short. Then everybody wants their money because now the numbers go down because there's no new money going in it. So they got the burst, it deflates because other people go in other markets. It's like people are like, nah, I don't want to buy crypto no more. Let's get real silver and gold. You know what I mean? So crypto is no longer going to keep doing this. It's going to drop. So people start selling. They're like, shit's dropping. Well, so now I'm getting my increase while I can get it. That's why that's going to burst. You see what I'm saying? Eventually, you run out because there's no new people coming in, and you can't pay everybody else because the people that ran that market paid themselves and built some houses off of all their members, and they built their thing for them, but you didn't get crap out of it, but what was on the number. You know what I mean? What was on paper, your little portion. You see what I'm saying? What we're supposed to do in a commonwealth is all go in on something, get something permanently on the board that's everlasting, that's in a trust, that you constantly walk through that thing. It's not just rich on paper. You're rich on the board. Literally, you built something, you can look at it, and you can enjoy it for the rest of your life. That's what that's supposed to be. See what I'm saying? And all that is in here. You can learn that all through Revelation, through your Holy Ghost. I want to see if, I was kind of winging it, but I want to see, let me touch one more time on that first psalm. So you got some offense, some defense, the places of defense, places, you can be an offender, and on offense, you can offend them. But there is other places where it says offense too. You play offense and defense in court. You know what I mean? According to how you're using your trust. Sometimes the trust that you use will set you up for you have to use it for defense. Sometimes you have to use it for offense. I know actually, so I have to show some synonymous terms. Some more synonymous terms real quick. See how it says right here in 2 Chronicles 6:18 says, but will God in very deed dwell with men on the earth? Yes, that's actually how God does it. God dwells with you in very deed. And it's very because that's how they verify things. By the way, verified is different than certified. It's kind of like you want to present yourself, not represent yourself. The word present is in here. You got to know the words of Moses. So when you go to court, you're supposed to present yourself. That means you're speaking for yourself. You don't represent yourself, then you're representing. Now you're using a new word into a new jurisdiction. Now you're thinking nothing. It's the same thing when you certify something that's not verified. So when you get a verified claim versus a certified complaint. A complaint is all admiralty. A claim is common law. You have to know the differences. Okay, so it is in very deed, because when it's in very deed, that's how you put yourself on the earth. You have to use deeds. This ain't the word action. It is, but it's a double bridle. So when something says, let your word be verified, the way the word is verified is that's how things come. This has come true. Or you say something comes to pass, or it shall be. You'll know what shall be because of the deeds. So, and there's a really cool thread, and I wish I could have showed it tonight, but in Isaiah it talks about basically one of the things that makes a prophet is they understand deeds. You can actually prophesy, and if you know someone's deeds and trusts, you can proclaim their end from the beginning because all of it's actually public knowledge. And so you can actually, that's what makes a prophet is because they have also knowledge of deeds and trust, which is knowledge of law, and that will actually add to your spiritual dynamics of knowing the end from the beginning. So that's what makes you prophesy. And that's also in here too. That's how I learned that. It's actually from the Bible, from threads. So where it says in very deed, see, it's 2 Chronicles. So when it says in very deed, and I got to come back to this, that comes from someone else was writing later because it comes from Exodus 9:16. I'll try to wrap up with these last few things. See, it says the same catchphrase. And in very deed, for this cause have I raised thee up. This is also quoted by Paul in Romans 9. For to show in thee my power, and that my name may be declared throughout all the earth. Well, you think God's power is, his name is Jehovah, like Jesus, right? You think, oh, Jesus, the name of Jesus, but the name of Jesus is the name that he gives you, which is his name, which is your name, because mine is thy and thy is mine. That's what I say. All of that is in very deed. That's how he raises you up. God will raise you up through deeds. You can't do, you don't want to do titles and registry. You actually do deeds and in truth. And not in fact, but in truth. Because truth is higher than fact. Facts are subject to truth. You have to know these words. That's all law stuff. My power is my name. And that's how you are. My power means you are raised up, and my power, my name is the in very deed. That's why this catchphrase "in very deed" is also what we just read, you know, and that's actually how. When Pharaoh said, "I will let you go, that you may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness, only that you shall not go very far away." You think this very "go far away" is talking about external, but really, you shall not go very far away in that you shall not change jurisdictions, because it's in very deed that you do this. That's what he meant. Very go. You find out the revelation to near and far has to do with jurisdiction. You know, then you can turn it into a riddle. You can say like, "Hey, how do I go far away and I didn't take one step?" Jurisdiction, by my words. What you say depends on where you're going. You're either far away from God, you no longer before Him, and you forsake Him when you're in the sea. You're in the sea and you're in the waters by how you say things. Or you're in the land, under the heavens, because He's the God of heavens and the earth. And when you have that ladder built by what you say, by what you know, by what you act out, your obedience, in that obeying, you actually writing things correctly. Now you're near the Lord and you're before the Lord because you're in thee or in Him, like we said in that Psalm 31 when we began with it. When you're in Him or in Christ, you're trusting in the Lord because He makes you a Lord and executor. Now you have trustees and beneficiaries. You're over in the land, in the heavens, using all that structure. Now you're near Him and you're far. No plague shall come near your dwelling because you are far from evil. But evil could be right beside you. How are you far from it? Because you're superior, because you're high above. And that's where we go, the length, breadth, depth, and height. It's all about paradigm points. So when you think he's talking external, he's really saying internal. You think he's saying something spiritual, he's really saying something in law. Oh, to be before the Lord. What does that mean, before the Lord? You mean before His throne? Face to face? Where is that? You have to be in Him. You can do that in the Spirit, be filled with the Holy Ghost, which is spiritual. But on paper, you can be far from the Lord. That's why a lot of people. That's what makes hypocrites. You can be like, "Oh, I love Lord," but you're building Babylon and don't even know it. It's like, well, by your deeds, by your works, you deny Him. That's what they call blasphemy. You know what I mean? And I have to say this real quick: is blasphemy is the blast of His nostrils with the femur bone, and that's where they shrunk the bone of the hip. And that the hip was connected to the thigh. That's why you say, put your hand on your thigh, you're supposed to swear. You're swearing when you write your name. If you write it, that's called blasphemy, by the way. You can do flatteries and flatten it, but it's called blasphemy. In writing, it's called blasphemy. The blast of His nostrils is like a nose, right? The same way you have two nostrils and goes to one, it's a fork. It's the pattern of a fork. That's the blast of God's nostrils, which is also a trumpet. It looks like this. And so that's the nostrils or the trumpet. This is the horn of the trumpet. That's also the blast of the nostrils. We're using a double bridle because your name itself is a blast or a trumpet or a double bridle. Because depending on how you write it, it's either giving yourself up or you are creating your title. You're doing blasphemy. You're blasting the femur bone, which was that's the mystery of Jacob wrestling the angel, where he changed his name. That's why he changed his name. You have to wrestle the Lord. And I won't let you go till you bless me. But the way you're blessed is you got to be a prince. See what I'm saying? That's why he's called Israel. He changed his name. That's the same thing why he changed Abram to Abraham. He came out of the Ur of Chaldeas, where they all knew this stuff. That's where the Genesis 6 spread to. When the 8 watchers came down, they were sharing all this stuff. All that stuff happened. That's when he left that, and God gave him revelation of how to beat all that stuff. And that's was given, passed on through all the blessing and stuff like that you read in Genesis. All that, the name changing and all this stuff, all over Genesis. And then Joseph was sold as a bondman, became a captive, but he actually built, that's the first time you kind of see this exclusive equity jurisprudence. Basically, they call it the wings of the morning. You can take the wings of the morning and dwell in the sea. That's what Joseph did. When he went to Egypt, he knew how to do the thing with changing titles and stuff and changing jurisdiction, using jurisdiction by using God's law, taking it into the waters, and that's how he was able to use tax dollars and stuff and fix Egypt, and say because of the famine on the world. And but in that, when he did that, everybody came under the lordship, and that's what you read in the few words and subtle words of Genesis. They changed. That's the beginning of when they changed. They came out of a certain kind of like God was still their God in covenant as far as like circumcision and stuff, but on paper they were changing their Lord up a little bit and going over into Egypt. And then Moses, the secret story of Moses is that's why he was doing this right here in Exodus. He was actually changing their jurisdiction back. And so when it says that they would go out of Egypt, it actually says I'll bring you out up from Egypt. You think up because Egypt's down here and Israel's up here because it's south, but they were actually brought into a lower status and they had to come up. Their status changed and they had no idea how this worked. And it says that all this happened over time when the king of Egypt that knew Joseph died and another one came in. He started doing dark stuff and started making them all sold and bondmen. And you get these stories in other books that relates back to Genesis and back to Exodus of what really happened. And then Moses learned all this stuff in law and changed it all. And that's not the first time it happened. They happen over and over again, back and forth, back and forth. They're always changing their status and playing with jurisdictions and changing up lords and using Babylonian money system versus God's money system, which is real substance. And it's in every book. This is the hidden story of Esther, Nehemiah, Ezra. And then you find out, like, and I'm just beelining it because it's all in very deeds. It's all about the deeds and the names and the trust and all that stuff. This is what, like, a hint of it is where he said, but not let not Pharaoh deal deceitfully anymore in not letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord. Because why could they not let them go? Because he was the Lord over them. Because he did a deceitful deal. That is from Job 16. My brethren dealt deceitfully. Deceitful deals come from deceitful deeds. See what I'm saying? It was in very deed for this cause have I raised thee up. See that they did it. They changed. They were not risen though, because they didn't have power and they didn't have the name of the Lord. And it says that in Jeremiah. They worship Baal. They didn't even know it. That's why they end up. If you don't think so, why did they build a calf? How did they learn to build a golden calf in the wilderness? We're just going to go do everything, because if you read Genesis, that shepherds were an abomination to the Egyptians. Why? Because they worship calves. Because they had, that's what it says, kiss the calves. Because all the calves, that symbol has to do with the bulls of Bashan, and bulls of Bashan is about Baal, which is Nimrod, which is the secret religion. That's what Egypt had. And there's different angles to this when they talk about worshiping of idols and worshiping Baal. It all has to do with that money system, which comes back down to that trust in that name. I have to say some of this on camera real fast to paint that picture, because it won't, without that big picture, when I go in here and start showing it, you won't know what I'm really talking about. So when it gives these little hints of these words, it's hidden in the story, it's carried in the story. But it's in Genesis, you see a different angle of it in all of Moses' writings, like in Exodus and stuff. And it's all throughout, all the way up to Esther. And then all the words that are hidden in those stories, like I said before, is all in Job. Job is a single book that you can train one person, or a single book you can train someone with, just with that book. But then, when you get all those words in that one book, as you go read Genesis to Esther, you see all those words hidden throughout, scattered throughout, you get different. It's just basically, this is what I've been doing, is you can tell any story from any perspective. If you have the words of Moses and the words of Baal, which is all the jurisdiction stuff, you can tuck those away in the stories and begin to give hints. But what if I took all those words out and just put them as a template, that's what these notes are, and just taught you the actual template and gave you the ways of thinking? Then you can just make up a story, insert all those things in. That's literally how you play the court's game. That's how you go to court and stuff. You know what I mean? So it's about what you say. It's not always about what happened. You know, we went into court and was trying to tell the truth, and this whole time, it didn't matter our story, what we said. We gave possession, and so over by saying this is someone's room, right? We gave up. They listened to that and didn't give a crap what we said. We're thinking we're in a court of law, but we're in administrative. We're thinking judiciary, but they're doing under the guise of adjudication. They're doing administration, and they can make up any rules they want because we think it's a court of law. It's not. It's a business transaction. It has to do with contracts, and so they can go by the judgment of their own heart. And they're like, I don't like how he said that, so I'm going to believe he did this, and this is my judgment. So they can make up a judgment, and it's anything they want. It's not according to the Constitution. It's not according to the Bible. It has nothing to do with this law. By the way, this is what judges are supposed to base everything on. In a real court of record, in a real court of law, this is the law. So judges are supposed to know this. And they kind of take the outlines of this, they codified it, so it looks like they're doing good, but they do all this evil that's in their own interests. And just depending on how they feel that day, depending on who they want to win, or who's paying the most is who they want to win. So they'll be like, I just don't believe your story, no matter how well you paint it. And this is literally what the courts do. This is why it's a whole corrupt system. It needs to be brought down, and that's what they're working on right now. But last thing I'll show you with this, because I have to end it here. It goes on to say, like, remember it says, this in very deed, which is my name is my power, and that's what raises you up. Because when you have power, it's my power, it's God's power, it's your power, because your name is my name, because you're owned by Him. That's why it's in very deed how you did it. It's all about the deeds, how you wrote it, right? But it says, behold, tomorrow about this time I will cause it to rain a very grievous hail, such as has not been in Egypt since what? The foundation thereof, even till now. What is the foundation of Egypt? Foundation of Egypt, that's since it became a nation. How did Egypt become a nation? Always off those deeds. That's how the birth of a nation. It's all hidden in the stories. So, since Egypt became a nation, since the foundation thereof, right? And that's what it says, in verse 29, that you may know how that the earth is the Lord's. How the earth is given to the hand of the wicked. That's where remember I showed you that in Job? That's over here. How is it given to the hand of the wicked? Because you gave it in very deed, and that's what made the earth is given to the hand of the wicked, and now it's the Lord is now Pharaoh. That's how he dealt deceitfully, because he did it through a deed. And then that's the hidden story. This is what Moses changed back, and this is why I do. But here's the thing: even if you change, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, is that even if you change your status and stuff, if you do not birth your nation, if you don't become bigger than them, they'll be like, I still think it's mine. And judges do that. They'll be like, okay, I'll just uncapitalize your name. You know what I mean? Like, sure, I'll make sure we write it your Christian name. Okay. Because like they don't care. Because like, how you going? If you don't, that's the only thing you know is the one piece of the secret, and you can't really defend yourself in all points. They don't care how you write your name, because they're still going to go by the one that's on record. It doesn't matter. They're like, so do you have a license? They're like, yeah. It doesn't matter. Like if you don't write it and you serve them there, if they still have, you literally have to change your status and do it all through the right jurisdiction before you get there and serve them. And then you have to stop them in all points. If you say it and you didn't write it and you didn't serve them with it, you know you served all your other leaders and stuff, you went in, you filed it, like they'll play that name game with you, and what law enforcement is going to listen to you? You know what I mean? Like if they're going to play policy enforcement, and they're going to enforce a policy, and they'll just beat you down right there in the court and have the bailiff take you away and they'll beat you up in the jail. You see what I'm saying? You got to have to be sovereign, to really be a lord, you should be a king. If you're a king, you definitely have officers, and officers of law that will enforce your law and your sovereignty. And that means you're with the Lord of hosts. You have to understand hosts, which is the arm of the Lord. He'll stretch out with a mighty hand and stretched out arm. So you have to understand stretched out arm is army. So that's how you got to build up your members. And so that's why they're asking me about a congregation. They want to know if I have witnesses. They want to know how big I am. You see what I'm saying? They kept cutting me down,
and saying like I got no members and stuff, because they want me weak, you know what I mean? And they want to make sure I'm saying the right things for them. They're like, oh, they'll say certain words to see if I know. If I don't know, they're like, oh, he doesn't know, and they'll still railroad you. That's why the more you know about law, the less you get railroaded, and you start holding them to their oath, which is under the Constitution, which is you're holding them to a certain state of form. You're holding them in the common law. And these are all things that's in here, and a master is supposed to teach you from the Bible these words and the like words and how to see it and the operations, how things are hid. And now I'll have to hit it on maybe part 7 about the and the but and stuff. Like it's another flipping pattern you're going to have to see. I'm running out of time, so I won't be able to put it on this time, but we'll catch that next time. But basically, all in all, that is Birth of a Nation. And it's been, like I said, I'm trying to show you piece by piece by piece. It's in every book. And this Bible is getting back in the household. And this is, you got to start when you're a kid. Just like dancing's coming back to our nation, you know what I mean? Like you should start when you're a kid. You should, you know, all things. Everything that's taken out of the school system is coming back. And so that way, and then once you see the interlaid system, it's easy to learn all things. It's easy to learn, and once they stop killing us, you know, food and stuff like that, and our health, you can live long enough to find many things to do, you know, and a lot of stuff's coming out. All right, I'm going to end it here, and yeah, we'll pick up again next time.
Awesome. Thanks, AJ.
Mm-hmm.